Hey everyone, Jess here. It's time for this week's Just a Tip. Okay, so this week I have a little bit longer Just the Tip because I've been seeing a lot of people complaining about slow sales, and I always ask them, what are you selling? Are you selling things that are actually in demand? So this week's Just the Tip is to sell things people want. Now, that seems like the most obvious advice ever, right? But over and over and over again, I am seeing resellers putting items online that were maybe popular last year, 5 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, and the demand for the items has changed a lot. And so the prices have come way down, or they're trying to sell products in a saturated market where there's just so many of the same types of things available, and not enough demand to meet all of those available products, so they don't sell. And sellers like to look at the algorithm and the keywords and the promoted listing and the price, or they want to blame eBay or the platform that they're selling on. All of those things can be factors, but the number one thing you need to look at is, are you selling things that people actually want? So people look literally everywhere for explanations of why their sales are slow before they look at whether the things they are selling are actually in demand. So that's what I want to talk about today. Now, to introduce this, I want to discuss a boring business term called price elasticity. So price elasticity in the world of business means how much demand for a good changes when the price changes. So if something has very elastic demand, that means that if there's an increase in the price, the demand will plummet. So people just won't buy it, or they'll look for other brands, or they'll delay their purchase. So even small changes in price can have big impact on demand. Now, an inelastic good would be something like prescription drugs or like gasoline, utilities. They're kind of more necessity items. You have to have them. So if the price goes up, the demand doesn't really change a lot because you're going to buy these goods no matter what. Now, as you might guess, most of the types of things that resellers sell have elastic demand. So that means that if the price starts to go up too much, or sellers are asking too much for it, consumers will maybe not buy it. And when their demand decreases, then you can start bringing the prices down, but bringing the price down is not always going to increase the demand because items might not be on trend, and there's all kinds of other factors that go into it. But I want you to sort of think about this idea of price elasticity when you're thinking about selling your items. It's not about having the lowest price. It's not about racing to the bottom with other sellers. It's about how much is out there and at what price is it selling at now, vis-a-vis how many people actually want it. So let's look at a few examples from eBay. Okay, let's start with comic books. Comic books are really interesting because they experienced an extreme price increase during the pandemic, and they have fallen back down, but not quite as far down as they were before COVID started. Comic books are so interesting. The demand for specific titles and specific books changes a lot, and it's a very sort of elastic product. So when a Marvel movie comes out, everybody looks for what's the first appearance of that character in comic books, and the comic book where that appears is going to be one that increases in price. Sometimes just the rumor that a character is going to be in an upcoming Marvel movie is enough to increase the price. And so we're going to look at one specific comic book. This is Uncanny X-Men number 266. This is the first appearance of Gambit. Now, Gambit, oh gosh, I don't follow the Marvel movies actually as much as I really should, considering how much we sell in the comic book realm, but I think Gambit is rumored to appear or has cameoed or something, but Gambit is long been talked about as this character who's going to be in a Marvel movie or have a greater role at some point. At least that's what I've heard. Like I said, I'm bad at that stuff, but I have known for a long time that Uncanny X-Men 266 is a good book to pick up. Now, during the pandemic, we were selling this particular comic book in near mint condition. We've had a lot of copies of it over the years. We were getting $300 to $400, I think $420 Canadian was the top price that we got for this comic book. It had gone quite a ways up during the pandemic. And now this one here, this one in the middle here, this is actually my listing that I just sold a few days ago. This is a near mint minus 9.2, and I tend to sort of undergrade the comic books because I always want people to be happy. This is a very high grade comic book. It's in beautiful condition. It's not a newsstand edition, which are a little bit more rare, but it's very high grade. Anyway, I only got $199.99 for it. Now, I'm still really happy with this price. I don't know what we paid for the comic book. I'm sure it was nominal. It probably came as part of a collection. So we're able to go with the market demand and be flexible in our pricing in order to meet whatever consumers are willing to pay right now. Now, I've seen sellers who just insist that the price that they got 2 or 3 years ago is the price that they should still get today. But with things like comic books and a lot of other types of collectibles, the market demand fluctuates a lot. And so you need to understand that and be flexible with your price. So if you try to maintain those high prices, consumers are like, well, I don't need this right now. I'm just going to wait for the price to come back down, and then I'll pick it up, or I'm going to look for a cheaper one. So that's something you really need to consider when you're selling stuff. Is this the type of product where the demand is going to fluctuate a lot and change quickly over time? Or is this something that has steadier and more consistent demand? For this one, this is a key comic book. Yes, it will have steady and consistent demand. However, the price will fluctuate a lot. So that's one example. Now, when I did a search for this one, I found that there were about 232 solds in the last 90 days on eBay. And I think I had, just over 500 are available. So almost half of the items available for sale seem to be selling within 90 days. That's not too bad, but I still think there needs to be, you need to be a little bit price competitive to make sure that yours is one of the ones that sells. So one of the things we look at, a lot of you know this, but it's always worth reiterating, is that you want to look at how many of an item are available versus how many are sold in the past 90 days. And you want that ratio to be, I wouldn't say there's a fine, a rule for this, but I like to see at least a 2 to 1, something like this. There's 500 available, half of them sell in 90 days. That's pretty good. That's probably worth listing for me. Now let's look at another example. And this I just picked totally out of the blue because I found this model kit in our spare bedroom this morning, and I was like, why haven't we listed this? So I looked it up to figure out why. And it turns out that's fairly obvious. So we do sell a lot of model kits. We probably picked this one up at a yard sale or something. It's the Revell Wright Flyer model kit. This one has just 30 sold in the last 90 days. And if we look at how many are available, it is 146. So a ratio of more like 5 or 1 selling for every 5 available. It's not that great. So with something like this, you're going to have to be really price competitive, right? You're going to have to be one of the lowest prices available to make sure that yours is the one out of every 5 that's going to sell. Now we see some sellers here that are trying to auction it, and I wouldn't recommend this on something that has relatively low demand. It's unlikely that these will get bids, or if they do get a bid, it's going to be one bid at the very lowest price, and this doesn't please a lot of sellers. So if you want to sell something like this, pick a fixed price that's as low as you can go, and then you may end up being lucky enough to be in the 20% of items that actually sell. Now, is this a buy and hold scenario? Is this something that's likely to get more rare? How much is the demand likely to change for this item? I mean, yes, model kits, vintage ones especially, are going to get more and more rare, but versions of this model are probably still in production. I would assume that you can get some version of the Wright Flyer at a hobby store, and it just doesn't have the same pop culture appeal as things like comic books. So it's something that you kind of just want to move through if you can, and probably don't source it. Some model kits are excellent to source, classic cars and things like that, where there's more demand for those particular types of items. There's probably more collectors of things that are I don't know, Cadillac related than there are of Wright Flyer airplane related. So think about that when you're buying something like model kits. Some model kits are going to sell really well at very high prices, and some like this one are going to have pretty slow demand. So you'll have to be extremely price competitive if you want it to go. So the last example I want to share is this one. I was going to do one on hobnail milk glass because I sold a hobnail vase last week and I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? I can't even believe that this left my store because there's so much hobnail glass available, thousands and thousands of items available on eBay, and the ratio on those is about 9 to 1, so 1 selling for every 9 available. Not good at all. Anyway, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent there, but I decided to pick this more specific example instead, and this is a Sooner Art Glass Swan. And the reason that I chose this one is because I have one, and I listed it, and I shouldn't have. It was a bad idea, because if I didn't look at the ratios for it, and I definitely should have done that. So if I see that there are 391 items available with the key phrase Sooner Art Glass Swan, and let's scroll down to look at how many have sold, and it is 13. So really bad ratios on this one. Mine is unlikely to sell. I think I had it listed at $34.99. Because I've already done the work of listing it, I dropped the price to $29.99, but looking at this and seeing them sell below $10, it's quite unlikely that mine is going to sell. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast over the past few weeks, one of the things I've been mentioning is that I'm going through my listings and taking down items that are low price because I don't want them in my store anymore. But I'm also looking at things like this that just don't have the demand. They're taking up space on my shelf and they're so unlikely to sell. Like I have like a 1 in 20 chance of selling this. It's not good at all, and it shouldn't be taking up space in my listed inventory. So this is something that you want to look at and you want to research. You should be doing this all the time, even if your sales are strong. But if your sales are slow, just be realistic and look at your inventory and figure out if you are selling things that actually have good sell-through rates and are likely to sell. This is the research that you need to do, and it takes time, and it's kind of, I don't know, I kind of find it fun, but it also gets a bit tedious. And this is also the research that I need to be doing. Yes, we have relatively strong sales all the time, but I find them slow right now. I think those are mostly for economic and big picture reasons, which I can talk about in another podcast episode. But it still means I need to change something. I need to be looking at what are some more high demand items that I could be selling. And I need to be asking myself if the things that I have listed are still in demand, if I should change my price on them, or if I should just get rid of some things altogether, like this Sooner Art Glass Swan that is probably never going to sell. Now, if you ask somebody to give you advice on why things are not selling, don't take it personally if people say it's probably the items you're selling. We all make sourcing mistakes. I still make them all the time, and I buy stuff that I realize later I shouldn't have purchased. There's so many thousands of categories of collectible and resellable items out there. You can't ever know all of those categories, and experimenting with sourcing is one way to learn. So even if you screw it up, there still has a benefit to you and to your business. So don't feel bad if you source the wrong thing. Just treat it like a business and move along. Remember that the things that you think people want right now, anecdotally, are not necessarily the things that they actually want. And what they wanted yesterday isn't always what they want today. So you've heard the phrase adapt or die. It's kind of harsh, but that's really what this is. If you have items in your store that are not selling, the very first thing you should do before you mess with pricing, before you mess with promotions, before you put things on sale or anything like that is, am I selling items that are in high enough demand to actually sell? And if the answer is yes, then you can look at where you sit compared to your competitors. Those are other people selling the same things, and say, can I improve my photos? Can I improve my description? Should I promote my listing? Should I reduce my price in order to be one of those percentage of items that actually sells through in that 90 days? That's all I have for today. That's your Just the Tip. Want more videos like this? Make sure to click like, subscribe, and leave a comment below to tell me what you want to see more of.